I need one of those things. We've got to look into that when we have the day where we like look at the switcher and stuff. I need the like sound effects built in.
Woo, woo, he's fire in the booth. Woo, woo, woo. We got another flagship exclusive coming your way. Woo, woo, woo.
Welcome back. This is episode 102
Yes.
of the Flagship Visuals Podcast. Today we are talking about, remind me again, it's one more time. It is
Not
subject.
reminding you.
Don't.
I'm not going to remind you about it.
I'll remember.
Yeah.
Being subject matter experts. And some people may be wondering, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Would you like to explain exactly what that means?
Yeah. So I think that, you know, when you're in an industry, okay,
I'll take
it from here.
Yeah. So when you're in the industry, go ahead, you can have it.
No, I think that, you know, in whatever industry you're in, you obviously are proficient at that skill set. But what we sort of discovered, you know, doing videos for all sorts of different industries, all sorts of different clients, is that you really become a subject matter expert in whatever that industry is. And you sort of have to become that to, you know, better serve the client, to make sure that the end product is as good as it can be.
Yeah, I guess starting into video production, you kind of just think, I need to be really good at making videos.
Right.
And come to find out, once you get clients, that's very important. People skills is very important. Doing good work, treating people well, but also you also need to become an expert on that person's company, whatever it could be. And for our experience, you know, we've kind of run the gamut of a lot of different types of industries, a lot of different types of clients. And so anytime we take on a new client, it's kind of like, especially if they're in a different industry that we've never worked with before, we need to like educate ourselves on that. So not just on, you know, how to color grade a video better or how to edit or shoot something better, but we need to learn about that particular industry. And so I think for a lot of filmmakers, for a lot of people out there, a lot of marketers, that's a massive step that could probably just be kind of skipped over or glossed over, is learning about the client, understand their business, you know, why it exists, what makes them tick, how they make sales, you know, how they're marketing their product, how it's positioned in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of what this episode really is kind of focused around, is becoming a subject matter expert, why it's important, why you need to, you know, invest your time as a filmmaker, production company, or a marketer. Like, why invest your time into learning about your client, you know, as much as they know about themselves. Hopefully you're able to bring an outside perspective to that. But why that's important, our experience with it, some funny stories along the way. And
yeah, you know, and I think too, it's really important to understand that, because I think a lot of times you can come up with a solution that may not be the right one if you're just thinking about it just from your perspective of, at least for us, which is, you know, creating video content. Mm-hmm. And so you can come up with a solution that may not be the right fit. It may be a cool video, it may be a cool concept, mm-hmm. But you can sort of marry yourself to an idea that isn't necessarily the best execution or the best solution for that need. And that's why I think, you know, we call it sort of our discovery phase. But whether or not they do a discovery phase or not, we still on, you know, that initial phone call, try to absorb as much information as possible from a client about their particular, you know, industry, about their particular product, about the personas that they're trying to reach, and so forth. And so there's definitely some due diligence that happens, you know, even when we're not doing that discovery phase, like even sort of a light pass at that. But I would say that the more that we work with a client, the more that we learn their product better and learn their industry better. And that only better serves the end product, that only better serves them in the long run. And, you know, I can think about, you know, one of our legacy clients, Steel, being, you know, a prime example of like, you're not just rocking up mm-hmm. and, you know, filming, like there's all these parameters that mm-hmm. you have to consider from a legal standpoint, from a use case standpoint. Do you want to maybe highlight some of those things, especially in the early stages that were learning curves, you know, when first working with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect example of like coming into a particular project and having all of these ideas, but immediately finding out a lot of those ideas are going to get shot down very, very quickly because of the parameters that are in place, and so with steel, the safety side of things with operating a steel product, an outdoor product, whether it's a chainsaw or, a trimmer head or whatever. I mean, we've run into this too in the tactical side of stuff. There's ways to do things the proper tactical way. And some of those are even kind of like arguable, some people have different methods in which they would say, no, do it this way or don't do it this way. So there's a little bit more leeway on some things. And then other things, it's like, you have to hold the product a particular way. But yeah, steel for sure. And I think there's probably a lot of other ones as well that have some very specific guidelines, but safety being one of the biggest ones. And so, you can't have people using a chainsaw over their head or doing something wild, with it, where like our creativity would come in and say, let's have them like whip it around this way and do this and do that. And, immediately like the legal department would pump the brakes on that very, very quickly. And so again, that kind of goes back to like learning everything about your client, understanding what you can and can't do, how they do want their brand presented and how they don't want their brand presented, again, because that'll save you a lot of headache on pitching some wild ideas that aren't even closely in line with like what their goals are. I know like on a lot of our discovery calls, one of the questions that we would typically get to is like, what's a win for you? What would be if this video were to check this box, like what would that win look like? And then, from there, there's a laundry list of other questions that we kind of go through, but kind of starting with the goal and what the win is kind of anchors your creativity and everything back to that. So,
yeah. And I think too, the parameters that you need to live within, obviously with a product like a chainsaw that has a lot of legal parameters, surrounding it on what you can and can't do. So even obviously we're sort of using like hyperbole when we're saying, oh, whipping around a chainsaw, like obviously our creative wouldn't drive us there, but there are things where it's like, the legal aspects of it influence what wardrobe can be. It influences your framing and what you can and can't show and how you need to show it. Like there's literal geometric space that we need to show that this person's not in the plane of the cut. So we can't angle it this way. We have to make sure that it's very clear if this were to show up in a courtroom that steel was doing it by the book, by their manual. And yeah, like I had mentioned on the wardrobe side, even how the user is holding the product, their arm has to be, straight, their thumb has to be wrapped around the product. Those are things that when from a video perspective, you're just looking at, does this look good? Is this how, I want it to flow in the cut? But if those legal boxes aren't checked off, then all of it gets thrown out in post. And, that's happened before, on, takes where we would want a print, and be like, yeah, that's what we want to use as sort of our hero take. It's either got thrown out in post or we've had to work around it. And thankfully we've grown to where now, legal's there with us, but a lot of times we're able to know and to
catch a lot of that stuff.
And so I think that's where it can help from an efficiency standpoint. I know that there's been, other times where we've, spoken with steel and even other clients where, stuff's had to be reshot entirely. So it's like you have a shoot happen, you have all of the variables and things at play, all the pre-production that leads up to that, pay for the production, pay for the shoot. And then we've heard stories of like, hey, we had to go back and reshoot it. Now, thankfully, nothing that drastic has ever happened with us. It's been like a shot or two that wasn't caught on set. But now that's been, really, really infrequent. Or, I can think of one more recently where the instruction manual and things like that were being updated. And, one little tiny item that, to the naked eye wouldn't be able to be seen, but from a legal perspective. And so that was able to be solved by using a disclaimer in the video. But all of that stuff matters. And, you're juggling that aspect of it alongside of the creative. And it can't be I'm just juggling the creative. I'm just juggling the concept, but it's both one and the same, because this one influences, sort of what lines you can color
for sure.
And
that goes from, again, going back to being a subject matter expert, like I think about something like that where it's like, okay, cool. Like the arm can't look like it's touching the motor head, even though like we can see it in real life. Yeah. The arm has a foot of gap between the motor head, the power head, and the elbow, like when they're trimming. But on camera, it looks like it's touching. So like that also matters as well. And I was talking more visual stuff, but I also think about a shoot we did like earlier this year. It was in New York City, and it was a medical shoot. It was for a pharma brand that was coming out with something for asthma, and it was going to be helping asthma patients. And so essentially, we had to kind of go in and become somewhat subject matter experts on like what it would look like, because this particular shoot that we're having asthma attacks on camera. And so we had to go in and just see like, what does an asthma attack actually look like? So we're watching videos online of like what it looks like from a real patient to like actually have an asthma attack, so that while we're on set, when we're directing people, like we're not directing people in some far off Hollywood way, because the end user that's going to be, considering buying this particular, medication is a real asthma patient. So they'll know like that's super fake, and so becoming a subject matter expert, even in something like that is something that's very crucial, because you don't want to walk on set and again, like make yourself look silly and then, essentially kind of slow things up on set by offering creative, choices or advice or directing the talent in a certain way that's like not in line with what, it should be in line with, So again, that's just kind of more examples of being a subject matter expert.
Yeah. And I think too, that there are sort of two categories. One, like we were talking about with steel, is more the legal parameters. So it's like, hey, we have to make sure that the product is shown in this way, not from a creative perspective, but from a legal perspective. Right. And then there's the other aspect where it's like, and again, that influences a bunch of things, how they're walking with a trimmer, how they're holding a chainsaw, what wardrobe they're wearing to make sure that it's safe, what eye protection, PPE that they have on and so forth. Like all of that matters to check those boxes. And that influences creative. But then there's the other aspect, which is what you're talking about, which is, when it comes down to the end user or people who experience this day in and day out, the authenticity aspect where you have to be an industry expert. And so, when we're on tactical shoots, we make sure that the talent has that background and has that training so that they're executing different aspects of whatever's needed properly. So if we're having a shoot, for instance, I think about a shoot that we were on last week, where there was a law enforcement scene, like we're using actual law enforcement so that we're not having to think through like, oh, did this person do this correctly or incorrectly, from that standpoint. And again, I think that that matters as well, too, because then that allows us, if we have, if we have trust established with, either talent or a product manager or another subject matter expert, from the company that's out there, one thing that helps alleviate is we're able to collaborate. And we talk about this oftentimes. So it's like you have how we would do it in the real world. Right. And then not that we're going to do it fake or Hollywood it necessarily, but how do we condense that into these shot sequences to still keep it exciting, to still keep the user engaged? And just because this is how we do it in the real world doesn't necessarily mean that translates perfectly on camera. And so it's our job to say, okay, I hear you on how this happens in the real world. We think this would be best represented visually in this way. And, again, that happens in pre-production and the creative, but it can also happen on set when we're chasing something.
A lot of stuff just changes. You're a big, like, physical, like, geometry. Like, man, the geometry of, like, getting the camera here and how this person's going to walk through is just not going to work. You're really good at seeing some of those things. And so, stuff just changes when you get on set. You could know, like, they're going to stack here and this is how they would kind of go in and so on and so forth. But it's like, then once you get on set, that space of how far they need to travel is so long that if we were to shoot all of that, like how it's done in the real world, it would just take forever for the video. So we, figure out a way to kind of speed all that up. But something else that you mentioned, which is, and we keep using the phrase like being a subject matter expert. I don't think that we would consider ourselves experts on necessarily like anything really, but we definitely have to be very informed and be more than just like beginner level understanding. But when you do have that type of when you have experts like a SWAT team or law enforcement on set, or a legal supervisor, or a healthcare physician, that someone that is an expert in their field, it does kind of free you up to kind of be able to do a little bit within that box. But it in particular on the tactical side of things, and with some other stuff as well, like it's actually opened up opportunities to where this last shoot that we just had last week, like client wasn't even on set with us.
Yeah.
And so we had our real true SWAT team subject matter experts on set with us. And then obviously we had plenty of pre-production meetings with client to kind of go through the product, understand the product, but they essentially just ship product out to us, and then we facilitated the entire shoot. So without having a good understanding of the subject matter, the client, the product, the service that they are providing, like there's no way you're going to be able to put on a production, have it go successfully with no client on set, and they just send you a product. And so that's something else that's kind of opened up a lot of doors on that end of stuff. And so I don't know if you have anything else you want to kind of touch on
I think it's
but.
like it sort of goes back to what I was saying, is it's sort of like a scale, I would say. Some shoots are going to lean more towards like, we have to check all these boxes, and we have to be juggling this in our head alongside of the creative, and this is going to really, really influence the outcome. Like that's just some of the products and some of the industries that we work with. That's just the case. I think like steel, with an outdoor product and tool that someone could injure themselves with if not shown properly or shown in a way that shouldn't be. I think about pharma, anything that we do in the medical space, like showing that in a way that like it is true to how, it needs to be from a medical perspective. So I think from that standpoint, we prioritize that much higher. But I think about what you're saying, having an actual subject matter expert on set with us, certainly frees us up a bit to where you would use the word informed. We're still always informed about whatever shoot we're going into, but it allows us to chase things creatively a little bit differently and to work and collaborate with them. Work and collaborate, if it's a client, we've worked with clients where they're, product managers, that are in that, particular business or brand. Yeah. And then on this last shoot, we were working with, people that were a part of, an actual SWAT team. Yeah. And they were saying, okay, this is how we would do this. And, this is how we would go.
It's certainly built over time as well. I think about that same client, first shoot we had with them. Yeah. We had someone fly out and be on set with us from the company. And then this last year we just did like no one was there and we're basically,
well, and it's a really good feeling too when that person's out there, and it's just like every time that we're putting something up on screen and we're like getting that sign off, they're like, yeah, this is great. You guys got it. And then I feel like I've experienced that quite a few times, that like there is, especially with a large investment like video is and can be, there is this level of trust that it's kind of like a trust fall, right? Like it's client is like, I'm scared to fall back. I'm scared that I'm not going to be caught. And once they're on set or once they see that end product, it's like, there's that like relief that happens. I think about, there's just a lot of instances where, at the first day of the production, I don't want to say tension, but it's just a big investment.
Nerves.
It's nerves. Yeah, exactly. It's not us, but it's client.
These guys know what they're doing.
Like a relationship that forms with the product manager over time. And as much as they're educating you on how their products ins and outs, you're educating them on how that is going to be reflected in the video that's being made. That what you see in camera is different than what you can see with your naked eye.
Yes, you bring up a good point. There's a project that we did, I think it was for IPA, but they do a lot of government contracting, a lot of defense type stuff. And I think that particular project, they wanted to go into the civilian sector and offer a training course for civilians that wanted to be more situationally aware when they travel overseas, making sure that they keep themselves and their families safe, and they're trained by professionals. And so we were tasked with basically putting together, essentially a short commercial for that, and there was a lot of different situations that we were kind of covering that they were going to be, including into this particular course. But I just remember meeting with the guys over there, who were super, super fun dudes. And I think we'll have to do a project breakdown of this entire project. And it kind of tapped in, I think one of the guys was from Boston, so it tapped into the heart of Matt over here, Haskell. Sure did. Who also is from the Boston area, and Noma. And I remember learning about, when you go overseas, getting your room tossed, they're going to go through your stuff in certain parts of the world. I learned about, making sure to see if someone was going to be kind of trailing you or whatnot. But then I remember one situation in particular was like, I don't know what you would call it, evasive driving. And I just remember, I don't know.
Like if you were basically, the idea is if you were being marked or targeted for, maybe you were being kidnapped, maybe you were being robbed, maybe whatever, whatever situation you could find yourself in. So it's like being situationally aware when you're in your hotel, being situationally aware when you're, going through like a passport check or whatever it may be, customs, whatever. So this was being situationally aware when you're in a vehicle, right? Essentially.
And there's two situations, right?
Yes. Getting off the X.
Yes.
Stay off the X.
Yes. And the one was pulling up to a stoplight, making sure you're not too close to the car in front of you, to where you don't have space to kind of get out.
Right.
But I remember learning about that scene, and I remember just how it influenced how we were going to shoot that entire scene. But essentially, you pull up behind a car, make sure you can see their bumper in front of you. That way you're not too close to them. And the reason being is because if you have quote unquote contact from different places and you need to get out of there quickly, you need to be able to smash into the car in front of you and push it off its line and then be able to get out.
Yeah.
And that was a very fun, interesting scene. But the other one that was even funner for us, because we got hands-on learning, was evasive driving and how to get yourself, if you can't smash through and get out, how to reverse and then quickly be able to get your car back around to drive forward. And so we actually had the opportunity of learning quote unquote J-turns, I think they were called. And then I don't know if we did something else, but I do remember we probably have some clips that we could throw up of us learning J-turns. But that's a specific, hey, we got hands-on learning on how to become quote unquote subject matter experts. And that influenced how we were going to shoot the entire scene. And a lot of the scenes, really most of the scenes in that particular project, by learning what it would look like, that's how we ended up, our creativity then was applied to our knowledge that had grown very quickly.
Well, so go ahead and explain what a J-turn is, because I didn't do the J-turn, I believe. I think Haskell, you did, and Matt, you
definitely did.
No, he didn't.
I didn't, because that propane tank that was right there, like set me over. I was like, which almost was flipped and hit.
Burnett did it. You did it.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Well, we're gonna have to.
Yeah, but. Just for the, I know we'll show it, but what actually is a J-turn? So you're stopped, and then what?
You're stopped. Contact happens. So bad guys come after you.
Yeah.
They're trying to get in your car, trying to steal your car, trying to get to you, trying to take your kids, whatever the case may be. You recognize you don't have an option to go forward to get out, right? To bust through the car in front of you and push it out of its way and go. So your only option is to reverse and get out. And so essentially what we were practicing was dumping into reverse, smashing the gas, and basically going as fast as you can in reverse, which is like 25, maybe 30 miles an hour, which going in reverse 25 miles an hour is very fast. And then as soon as you feel like you're up to a certain speed, you grab the bottom of the wheel and whip it as hard as you can, which spins the whole car around. And while you're mid spin, you're dumping it into drive. And by the time you come full circle back to 180, you're driving away at that point.
I think too, though, something with IPA was when we were first pitched the idea, and then we were kind of in the creative concepting phase and hadn't been informed, hadn't learned or met with them and like seen it firsthand, it just sounded so abstract and dull that we were like, how are we going to do this?
Well, yeah, because a lot of it, and that would be a really good example of like the authenticity, relying on subject matter experts, and then them also equally trusting us to elevate that visually. Because in essence, it's like sort of like what they were putting together was like a masterclass of situational awareness and how that would apply, across the board and all these different, arenas that you might find yourself in. Self-defense was thrown in there too.
But there's a good like one-to-one example of that paying off was we were given the opportunity to go see them do a course called Chasing the Rabbit, which is like one person is the mark and then a group of people are coordinating to track them. And we went and witnessed it in cars up in the DC area, and it was super boring.
Yeah,
because it's a boring thing. You're driving,
and it's supposed to be boring.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things that they wanted to highlight. So
I wouldn't even say boring. I would say it's very uneventful.
It's just driving, and then saying he went this way, okay, and then I drive that way. Yeah, and so we had asked them like, can we make it on foot? Would it ever be on foot? Because it looks better if we can. Go from people's perspectives.
And they were like, yeah, absolutely.
We can shoot it on the street as opposed to in one car into another car. So then we ended up shooting it on foot, and it felt more dramatic, but still didn't portray.
Felt like a little bit more like born identity.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Like, what again, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, but something that happens in real life might not be the best way to kind of put that onto video or into film. And so it's a great example of that,
So we were still authentic, and we, rather than us just being camped out in vehicles and cars and not being able, that's like a really good example of something that like is a lot more heady. Like, here's what's happening in everybody's heads. Right. But visually, it's cars parked, cars driving slowly, cars driving normally, talking on a phone. And so to show, and Haskell, you're right. Like we asked, is there any other way to do this? Could we do this on foot? And that's what we ended up doing. And that's where we did the box, I think is what it was called, where they essentially box, the person in. But yeah, we had, there was just a lot more there to work with visually while still remaining authentic. And it, made it exciting visually.
But I think a good point of this is that you two went all the way up to DC to become subject matter experts on that particular portion of that project, and spent like a half a day up in DC, kind of witnessing how this would kind of take place. And then that's when we came up with the creative to how to make that particular thing better. And so again, you guys having not gone up there, we would have shown up on set and it would have been exactly that. And we would have been trying to figure out how to film people driving around in cars and just talking on the phone and saying they made a left on so-and-so street.
Yeah.
Exciting and fun.
Well, I think too, it's just, when you're in the creative, you need to be looking at, like I said, like all these parameters of like, what can we actually do? What's authentic? What do we have sort of poetic license to, fluff or show in a different way? And then in all of these, how can we make sure that we're elevating that? And I think, with, if you're not thinking that way and you're just thinking of, purely through like the lens of like video and shooting and recording, like it'd be very easy to, find yourself in a situation like that where you're like, cool, we're just filming, this Chase the Rabbit scene where they're going to hop and they explain it to you. And then it's like, you get out there and you're like, man, this visually isn't interesting. And so, yeah, it's just, you definitely got to continue to see around the corner on all of those things. In whatever situation you find yourself in.
On some projects, we have a lot more time and a lot more budget to be able to spend more time on, being educated on that stuff. And then there's other projects where it's somewhat of a show up and shoot. We will still always do our best to have a pre-pro call, multiple calls, location scouts if possible.
Well, but I think too, on top of that, it's also we sort of know what category it's going to be in. Like something like that, something like the IPA, like required us to really like deep dive and understand to make sure that we were delivering sort of a launch commercial that matched and really sold and connected with the person viewing it. Other things don't necessarily require that large of a deep dive, or it's something that we've done prior and sort of have that like, already in the tank, so to speak, that we can, be accessing as well.
But one thing we do, what I was going to say was like on a smaller project, oftentimes we do have to show up on set and it's like the first time we will start with, because I think the temptation is to go, all right, here's how we're going to shoot it. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And like, we're going to come over here and then you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And you immediately start getting into shot blocking and how you're going to create the video. But we typically will always start from like, okay, go ahead and walk me through what this looks like. Like whether it's, these photons and at Jefferson Lab. Yeah. Walk me through like, what does this look like? What buttons are they hitting? Where does this go? Like walk me through the thing. Yeah. And then we'll figure out how we're going to shoot it. Or, on the medical side of stuff. Yeah. Walk me through what this procedure looks like. Walk me through what this product being used outdoors looks like, this tactical thing, this whatever, like fill in the blank on whatever, but walk me through that one time. We get to like kind of just see it. And then from there, then we kind of collaborate on like how to make that much better.
Yeah. And we try to too condense that, like kind of like explain it like I'm 5, like narrate what you're doing. Like, okay, I'm going to grab this and then I will press this button and then I will input some things in right here. And then I'm going to turn and then inside the machine, it's going to do this. And then that's what happens. That's my job. And so I think that, even that communication was learned where it's like, you kind of want to be polite and you want to like, just, the answer you're trying to get, but a lot of time can be burned where now I just kind of like show up and say, I'm looking for where your hands are going, what they're touching and what we can see visually. Can you explain it to me like I'm 5? And then I'll ask you questions, if I have any after the facts, like instead of this, can you stand like this and do that? Can you use your left hand instead? And things like that. And, a lot of times that sort of like, cuts through a lot of time, like saves us a lot of time of like figuring things out and problem solving by not asking those questions like in real time.
I think clients can also be very nervous, like coming into one of their first couple productions and not knowing what to expect. They almost feel like they need to be subject matters on the video side.
And it's
like, well, we show up and some of the first things that are kind of being thrown at us, like, we were thinking we could shoot from over here and over there. And it's like, we can determine all of that stuff. But they don't have to feel that burden of feeling like, we need to like know like where they can kind of put the camera and shoot and do all these things. It's like, we just need them to know what their job is, what their particular expertise is. So walk us through that more so on the visual side of things. And then we can kind of discuss through what the best way is going to be plan of attack wise.
And I feel like we've done a good job at communicating that to our clients when we're onboarding them or working in the midst of a project. Like, we will solve all of that stuff, and we will let you know if we need anything from a like a logistical standpoint. A lot of times it, like one that's always repeatable, always like shows up is control of house lights, right? Like that would be an example, right? And that still 9 times out of 10 always happens too, where it's like, I don't know if you guys are bringing lights in, but you can use these overheads if you want, we actually don't want those overheads. We're going to tell them off. We're going to set everything up. But that would be an example of, like us making sure we're working with the client to make sure that on the video side, it's, translating. But I would agree with you that a lot of times it can, sort of like people just want to help at the end of the day and want to make sure that it's great. And, we've definitely learned how to get to those answers the quickest.
But where we need the most help is them educating us on their subject matter. And that's important to us. And it ends up being important for the success of a project. And that's kind of what this episode is all about is, why it is important for us to know, what the subject is, learn everything about it, learn even, where are you going to use this video? Like, is it going in a trade show? Is it going in a trade show booth? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be social content? Like we need to know all of those things because that'll greatly influence how we shoot certain things a certain way and how we would edit.
And the industry that the thing is in, because like, what sets your product apart if you have no like frame of reference for the industry, you know, it could be just a worse thing that's already out there, you know, like getting them to tell you like, hey, this is brand new type of feature. And so it's like, all right, that's something we want to focus on.
Yeah. I mean, like Psionics is a perfect example of that. The Shoot in Key West, it was a brand new product that was coming out that was essentially like being able to see in the dark. The camera is like amazing. It's for boating. They were getting into the boating sector. It was in the, you know, defense side of things for operators, but this was a camera that was different than like infrared. It had a lot of different things that was a lot more beneficial to where essentially someone who's running their boat at night, you can see literally in the dark. It's the craziest thing. Like you'll look pitch black with your eyes, look down at the screen, and you can see buoys, you can see pilings, you can see crab pots, you can see everything. It's wild.
I wasn't on that shoot, but I remember when we went to SHOT Show and we went to their booth and they had that room that was like completely blacked out.
Yep.
I think there was like maybe like the smallest of ambient light in there, but like it was basically like black, like pure black. And then we put on the goggles that had the you know, same sensor in, and it was like looking in a room like this. Like it was like completely wild.
Yeah, it was super wild.
Yeah.
But you get colors. You can see color renditions.
Well, that was the thing. It wasn't just night vision. Yeah. It was like picking up color, which was a huge
and there's
deal.
a lot of benefits to that kind of stuff. Like very different between infrared and that. And so that's a good example of like, like what differentiates your product from something else, and like how do we show that off the best way possible? And so so
well, even in that too, like even how you guys had to approach it, because the shoot like it had to take place during the daytime. You had to like shoot for night, flip it in post, all of that. But like even practically how you guys approached visually to make sure like it's got to look really dark, you know, here to like it wouldn't do the camera justice if it looked like golden hour or daylight. Like, oh, you know, we're shooting this in the day, but trust us that the camera.
That's like a whole project breakdown. That was like a very, very complicated project, and we had a fantastic partner with Alice Blue, who did amazing like CGI water monsters coming out of the water, just crazy stuff. So that's definitely like a whole project breakdown we'll have to go through on that particular one. We'll have to get Austin Burnett, who was the DP on that, to come in to kind of speak to some of those logistical things with drones and shooting day for night and et cetera, et cetera. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. So I think we even got in the water at some point and had a splash bag that we were getting shots with. But anyway, well, that's the importance of being a subject matter expert or being educated on the product or service you're about to, you know, create content for. So anything else we want to kind of add before kind of wrapping up?
No, I mean, I just think that it's important, especially for people within our industry, to just don't fight that. Like, don't be so like protective of your creative or your vision that you don't let the industry or the client influence the outcome. It's incredibly important, and it'll save you a lot of time and headache if you do that, you know, on the front end and not on the back end. And again, ultimately, it's about a collaborative effort of bringing that knowledge that client has from that industry, educating yourself on that, and allowing that to influence, you know, while still remaining authentic, while still pushing boundaries, of course, and elevating things visually or creatively. But ultimately, it'll just result in a better product at the end of the day. So that's why it's really valuable, and not something you really think about. I know it wasn't something we really thought about, you know, when you're, you know, going in, starting a video production company. Like, you don't expect to become a subject matter expert in the tactical sphere or the outdoor power equipment sphere or the medical sphere. Like, but it's just something that has to happen for those particular projects. So.
Well, cool. I mean, that's pretty much it on being a subject matter expert. If you guys have any questions or anything, please hit us up. We'd love to know what you guys would want to learn more about, or want to hear from us. So, cool.
Thanks for watching. If you liked what you watched, check us out every other Wednesday. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, Comment if you want some content or need some questions answered. We're happy to do so. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Flagship Visuals Podcast. We will catch you next time.